we're going to jump right into our last session here, which is called the Zero Waste Economy for All. And I hope that all of you stay on. This is going to be very interactive. We're going to bring back Max from this morning, who's our artist. So I'm just going to share a slide really quickly, but I just wanted to share some thoughts. And Amanda, there was quite a few questions in the chat. So Amanda's staying on so she can answer some of those also. But really, as we end today, and thank you all for your time. And once again, thank you to all the sponsors. This wouldn't be possible if we didn't have our sponsors, and to the National Recycling Coalition, and to Zero Waste USA, and all of our incredible volunteers. And make sure you tune in tomorrow. So I'd like to use this time in the chat for you to share your favorite speaker, your favorite topic, what was missing, what can we improve on as far as not only this conference, but what do we need to talk more about in creating a zero waste economy for all. And I think this is really critical because we live in a global society. And so as much as we want to keep things local, and we need to keep things local, we know what we do here in the US from all over the world. On a positive note, what I find is exciting, I work with global clients, and a lot of them are always apologizing because they're not in the US or they're not in California, and it'll be harder for doing it, or they don't have the infrastructure, and yet they do it. And we get facilities. We heard from Colgate, they've been the first in over 21 countries, and undeveloped countries, and countries that don't have well-rounded waste management, but it's because they're focusing on zero waste. They're focusing on reduction and reuse and community. And unfortunately, I live in Placer County, California, and I only have a trash bin. So as much as we'd like to say California is ahead of it, it's not all of California. But I can do, I barely put out any trash because I focus on that zero waste hierarchy. One of the things that really hit me this year is when I watched Jon Stewart's new program called The Problem. And he kicked off his new series with what was happening in Afghanistan and other countries during the war. And it's something that we really need to address, and we need to look at. War is horrible for so many reasons, but what that causes to our environment. They had absolutely no waste management program. So what they were doing is they would just burn everything: hazardous waste, medical waste, e-waste, regular waste. And the impact that it has not only had on our own military that are coming home with horrible diseases and cancer and health issues, but what we've left behind in those countries. And so, on one end, we can be very blessed that we're far beyond just open burning. But at the other side, this is how damaging, and a lot of it here, where in the US, it's invisible toxins and invisible damage. And many of our speakers talked about the social equity. And where are most of our recycling in our landfills located in that impact? So please share in the chat what your favorite speaker, your favorite topic, how you want to get involved in creating a zero waste economy for all. And I'm going to bring Sue on for just a few minutes to lend her comments, and then we are going to bring Max back on. I'm seeing if he is, if Chris has queued him up, he's going to share a couple of slides. And I think bringing that beauty of what we're trying to save, and even the beauty and telling the story of what we've done. So Sue, would you like to share any insights or additional comments on creating a zero waste economy for all, or just what you learned today from the conference?
I think that we've had a great group of people. They've been open to communication in the chat, which has been outstanding. I think we've got a passionate group of people here that really want to do the right thing. We've just got to find that balance of, you know, how do we get there? What are the innovations that we need to use? How do we, you know, in some instances, you might have to recycle something before you can reduce it. And so how do we look at that going forward? And I'm a firm believer of sharing, right? So I know that the presentations are gonna, or the recordings are gonna be posted. I should put the light on. And, you know, just where do we go from here? You know, do we wait another year to have the discussions that now we've lost a year? And Nina was outstanding in motivating and thinking big. And I think we've got to find again that balance of thinking big. So working with the companies that have been on to working small with those that have to start somewhere. We can't just jump from, you know, 10% diversion to being at 90%. It takes planning and organization and funding and passionate people. And I even think the corporate goals are a huge driving force on where we're going to get for the future. So I thought it was amazing. I'm thankful for the sponsors. I'm thankful for NRC and Ruth and Portia and Chris and the many people behind the scenes that helped make this work. You did an amazing job with putting the right people together once we figured out our topics. And I'm just quite proud to be involved.
Fabulous. And I love all the chat that's going on. And please keep sharing. And we're trying to bring, there's Max. Okay, Max is going to come on and he has a couple of slides he wants to share and just talk more about your project and your art and how it's inspiring others and how you're using it as a tool to motivate. And please go ahead and share any questions that you have for Max in the chat and we'll have him answer those. So thank you.
Absolutely.
Max, you're on.
Perfect. Yeah, well, I won't spend too much time preaching to the choir. I mean, if you're here, you understand the importance of recycling. You definitely have possibly one of the best senses of why what we're doing is so important, but other people might not. And it's hard. It's really hard. I understand from a visual perspective. I grew up dyslexic. So for me, reading and writing were never my strong suits. And I always struggled to like express stories and like these big ideas that were in my head until I started to use a sketchbook. And so for me, like my grandmother is always really encouraging of just like using a sketchbook, like little pictures to do kind of some big storytelling. And it kind of told 1,000 words, but it also helped shift that perspective. And when it comes to recycling or zero waste or any of this, it's almost too close for us to actually focus on. You know, it's like holding something so close in front of your eyes, you can't see it because we live this. So for what we've been doing, especially in Alaska, and I'm going to share a couple photos here. Let's see. Now everybody sees the messy desktop. So what we've been doing in Alaska has been a lot of work with especially marine debris. And this is just a lot of ocean plastics. I think it's 8 to 10 million tons end up in the ocean, ends up a lot on the shores of Alaska. And it's trying to figure out how to capture something so complex and so depressing and so just mind-bogglingly big. And how do you share this kind of experience? So Nina was actually on this trip. Those aren't her hands, but this is the kind of stuff we are picking up. These are very small pieces, which is what it breaks down into. We're picking up much bigger pieces. Oh, let's see, that's the art side. Much bigger pieces, nets, lines, sometimes weighing close to a ton, 400 or 500 pound nets sometimes, and trying to kind of wrap our heads around this. And so for me as an artist, I would love to write stories, but I've never been good at that. And so I'm kind of trying to shift that perspective. So a lot of what I ended up doing was sketching. I had my sketchbook with me. And so I just started painting. If you've seen the video, you kind of saw how I'm trying to like blend a lot of those, but even somewhere like this is on Katmai's coast. You can see a little bit behind, there's this beautiful, like huge, just mountains. Most of it's almost completely untouched. It's inhabited mostly by bears. Yet in about 100 feet, this is the amount of marine debris that I found. I kind of laid it all out, sketched it, just to kind of get a sense. There's this weird thing being somewhere so beautiful and painting plastic. But a lot of this kind of ended up there, and a start of trying to understand or trying to share this often comes with these little creative sparks, because as I said, I don't really need to preach to the choir. Everyone here kind of knows how important it is, but a huge aspect in the coming struggle against it is going to be sharing that story. And that's going to take a lot of creativity, especially because some of these obstacles can be so depressing. I'm 28, and so I hope to be alive, for several more decades. And so I'll be living through the consequences of whatever actions happen right now. And so for me, I feel like I've got quite a stake in it. But even as depressing as some of the consequences of no action will be, I think that huge problems require huge solutions. And so I'm so excited to be a tiny part, even if it's just a small creative part of sharing the good work that other people are doing in that large solution to tackling such a giant problem as kind of going zero waste and that giant paradigm shift that Nina was talking about. And I stopped the share.
Great, thanks, Max. Can you share a little bit more about yourself and your website, and what are your next steps with the amazing video that was put together and your artwork? And I think a lot of people want to know where they can buy or purchase or support.
Right. So we made that short video. It's 5 minutes long. If you have, the link is in the bio, and I can put the link in the chat again as well. It hasn't been released, although we've been to several film festivals. We've taken this film and kind of this talk about, the need for recycling and kind of emptying the stream, kind of ending up in the oceans. We've been to the Banff Mountain Film Festival. We've been to Kendall. We've been to, the US. So it's really been amazing to kind of have something, just a slightly different look at what is actually a pretty relatable problem. We just have it somewhere pretty extreme here in Alaska, but everybody's going to experience this, and being able to kind of creatively look at that. So we've been really lucky to kind of be able to bring that around. If you look up, whether it's on Instagram, Ocean Plastics Recovery is who I'm working with a lot right now, or Trailbound Sketches, I post a lot of my paintings on. But the hope is to continue to do work like this. We had a really good, we'll be posting this publicly probably in a month or two, but there's a hunger for it. And people might not think of recycling, or they might think they know recycling, but there's a hunger for these kind of creative looks at something that is so commonplace, but is so important. And so the hope is to keep on doing things like this. This next summer, we'll be back out there, potentially with a little bit bigger of a scope, maybe looking at kind of the interconnectedness of all of this. But I think that as this moves forward, artists are going to play a really big role in kind of helping translate the important foundation that everybody, especially in a conference like this, has been working on. And my hope as a dyslexic is I appreciate the studies, I appreciate the words and the graphs and the documents, but unless it's a picture, I rarely even look at it. My form of reading is like skimming the National Geographic and looking at the pictures and like the one sentence description. That's about as much as I usually get into it. But I'm hoping to be able to create that content that could reach other people like me, and to be able to catch them both visually and also spark that imagination, because this is going to be a massive undertaking to kind of make some of these leaps and bounds. And it's hard to make those jumps unless you can imagine what you're jumping toward. And so I think there's a lot of artists and a lot of people who might not even know they're artists on the inside who are excited to make those kind of creative leaps, to help us imagine that future and visualize it a little bit, to encourage others to make that leap as well.
Great. Thank you so much, Max. And we welcome you into our community. We have lots of webinars and blogs and everything like that, and want to join in your community. And I also see a huge opportunity for opening it up for young people to really be able to see. I think all of us have become very numb, and even understanding, like, our beaches are so polluted in some areas, and our forests and everything. like it's just standard, and we got to realize like that isn't part of nature. That's not part of the ecosystem. And so I think that's what you really bring also. So thank you. And we'll be talking again really soon. We're going to bring it in. It's time for happy hour. And so I'm going to let Sue close it out with any closing comments for the conference. And then we'll bring Ruth in, our hostess with the mostest, to kick off the webinar. So thank you again, Max and Andy and Nina, for sharing so much.
Thanks so much. It was great to share.
Thank you. Thanks, Max. That was amazing. I think that was more eye-opening for me on how do we communicate with the youth of the world, right? We're all doing so many wonderful things, but if we're not doing the communication well, they're not getting it. And so that was just a light bulb. I want to learn more. So thanks everybody for your comments and recommendations and ideas and books. Really incredible. In closing, I think I just, hey, Stephanie, outstanding job putting this whole thing together, the right people on the panels and how it was communicated. I thought the entire day was worth me getting 180 emails for the day, but really, really amazing. And I'm just so proud of the direction that we've gone. I've been doing this for 28 years. And when you look at it, and Gary Liss is probably still on, and I live in the same place you do, where, yourself, me, and Gary are within 15 minutes of each other. I have 7 containers in my garage for junk mail and plastic bags and you name it, because it's not going in my trash can. I'm afraid to death you or Gary will show up and start looking into it. But I think that the key to this is we have moved forward. We're just not moving fast enough. And some of the projects I think are not big enough. So, I almost wonder if there's people and you guys have got our LinkedIn, Stephanie's and mine. I'm more than happy to sort of put together a group that wants to, and actually, I don't think we need that. I think the true community group that Susie's running is really a great way for us to start working on that big project. And where do we go with this? So let's try not to recreate the wheel, but to keep the wheel moving in a faster speed. I think that's my closing.
Great.
So thank you all, everyone. I'm looking forward to happy hour. I've only been drinking water, so it's sort of boring, but anyway, thanks all.
Great. And I want to thank all of our speakers again. Each and every one of you have been amazing, and our moderators.